Okay, so we have a question here. All right, we've been given our output, number of units. We've been given the total costs. We've been given the total fixed cost and we need to find the total variable cost. We need to get the average total cost. Average total cost. We need to get the average fixed cost. We need to get the average variable cost. And we need to get the marginal cost. Okay, so I'll show you how we get this. All right. So we're going to start with our total variable cost. First formula we need to remember is this one here. Total cost equals fixed cost plus variable cost. Remember, fixed costs are the costs that are not dependent on how much you produce. For example, factory rent. If you produce 0 units or you produce 1 million units, the factory rent will still stay the same. Variable costs are costs that are dependent on how much you produce. So if you produce 0 units, you won't have any variable cost. But if you produce 1 million units, your variable cost to increase basic. All right. For example, the materials. The materials cost is an example of a variable cost. All right. So in the question, we already have our total cost, we already have our fixed cost. So we just make variable cost subject to the formula. And we're going to say variable cost equals total cost minus fixed cost. Okay. This is the formula we're using. Variable cost equals total cost minus fixed cost. All right. So we're going to be subtracting our total cost from our fixed cost to get our total variable cost. So you say 1,200 minus 300. 900 is our total variable cost. You're going to say 1,800 minus 300. 1,500 is our variable cost. 2,000 minus 300. 1,700 is our variable cost. All right. 2,100 minus 300. 1,800 our variable cost. 2,250 minus 300. 1,950 is our variable cost. 2,600 minus 300. 2,300 is our variable cost. 3,300 minus 300. 3,000 is our variable cost. 4,500 minus 300. 4,200 is our variable cost. Colleagues, are there any questions to this? Any questions? Okay. We now move to our average total cost. Okay. So average total cost, ATC, equals your total cost divided by your output. Okay. This is just the average total cost is just the total cost for 1 unit. Okay, colleagues. Average total cost is the total cost for 1 unit. Okay. So when we produce 0 units, the average total cost is our total cost 1,200 divided by 0 units. 1,200 divided by 0. Why is it refusing here? Okay, 1200 divided by 0 is 0. Okay, yes. When we produce 1 unit and our total cost is 1800, our average total cost, you're just going to say your total cost divided by number of units, 1800. Okay. When we produce 2 units, our total cost is 2000. So average total cost, you say 2000 divided by 2 units, 1000 kwacha per unit. When we produce 3 units, our total cost is 2100. So 2100 divided by 3, 700. So colleagues, I want you to notice the more units that we are producing, okay, our average total cost is dropping. Why? Because the total cost is being spread out amongst the units. Okay. When you produce 4 units, the total cost is 2250. Divided by 4, our average total cost is 562.5. When we produce 5 units, our total cost is 2600. So average total cost 520. Okay. Remember, this is the total cost per unit here. What is average total cost? Is the total cost per unit basic. When we produce 6 units, our total cost is 3300. So our average the cost per unit 550. When we produce 7 units, our total cost is 4500 divided by 7, 642. Okay. Yes, colleagues. Any questions? Okay. Mhm. Mhm. These economies of scale. Okay. These economies. Remember, economies of scale is when your average total cost is dropping because you are producing more, right? But eventually, there's going to reach a point where this cost will stop reducing. And the more you continue producing, it will start rising. Yeah. So it's not always that the average cost will fall forever. No, it's going to fall for a certain range, but as you continue to produce, eventually it's going to start rising. That's the diseconomies of scale, where you continue to produce more. Now your average total cost is starting to rise. Is that okay, sir? Yes, that's where as a frame you now say that So here even as this frame, it wouldn't be advisable to start producing over 5, because eventually now the total cost is going to start rising. So remember these two terms: economies of scale, when your average total cost is dropping for the unit. Then these economies of scale, as you continue to produce more, this average total cost starts now to increase. Okay. Average fixed cost is your fixed cost divided by quantity. Okay, colleagues, fixed cost divided by quantity. Okay, so here when you produce 0 units, fixed cost is 300. So 300 divided by 0 is 0. Okay. When you produce 1 unit, Remember, fixed costs stay the same. They are not dependent on output. Okay, so when you produce 1 unit, average fixed cost 300. Okay, that's a fixed cost per unit there. When we produce 2 units, okay, fixed cost is still 300. We're producing 2 units. The fixed cost per unit is 150. Okay. When we produce 3 units, the fixed cost still stays at 300. 300 divided by 300. When we produce 4 units, again, fixed cost still stays the same, 75. When we produce 5 units, okay, the fixed cost becomes 60 per unit. Okay. When we produce 6 units, the fixed cost still stays. The fixed cost is still 300, but the average fixed cost is dropping. Okay. When you produce 7 units, 300 divided by 7, 42.8571. All right. So here, as you can see, our average fixed cost is dropping. Okay. And it's going to it's going to continue dropping. Why? Because this fixed cost is not changing. So the more units that you're getting is being spread over more units. So it's dropping and dropping and dropping. Okay. Yes. Any questions? All right. Average variable cost. So average variable cost, you can say average variable cost is your variable cost divided by Q. Okay. Yes, your variable cost, these total variable costs, we're going to be dividing by the quantity. Another way you can find it, remember, also total cost equals fixed cost plus variable cost. Also remember, average total cost equals average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Okay, colleagues, I forgot to put this up. Also, this formula, you can use it. Okay. But then we will still divide the variable costs, the number of units. So when we produce 0 units, our total variable cost is 900. Our average variable cost, 900 divided by 0, 0. When we produce 1 unit, our total variable cost is 1,500. Right? So 1,500 divided by 1, you get 1,500. When we produce 2 units, our variable cost is 1,700 divided by 2 units, 850. When we produce 3 units, our variable cost is 1,800 divided by 3, 600. When we produce 4 units, our variable cost 1,950 divided by 4, 487.5. When we produce 5 units, our total variable cost is 2,300 divided by, wait here, total variable cost 2,300 divided by 5 units, 460. When we produce 6 units, our total variable cost is 3,000 divided by 6, 500. When we produce 7 units, our total variable cost is 4,200 divided by 7, you get 600. Okay, so even here, what we've noticed with our variable costs, first they'll drop, then they start rising again. Any questions, colleagues? Okay, finally we go to the marginal cost. Okay, the marginal cost, the additional cost you incur when you produce an extra unit. All right, so remember the formula for marginal cost: change in total cost over change in output. Now, colleagues, I want you to notice this. The change in output is changing by 1 unit. So it means no matter what we do, our denominator is always going to be 1. Okay, our denominator is always going to be 1. All right, so usually at times you don't even need, all you just need to do is just subtract these total costs. Okay, so this is the shortcut, then I'll show you the long cut, but this is the shortcut. For 0 units, there is no marginal cost because we were not producing any units previous to the 0 units. So you never have a marginal cost when you're on 0 units. But when we move from 0 to 1 unit, our total cost increases from 1,200 to 1,800. So we said marginal cost is the change in total cost. The new total cost, 1,800, minus the old total cost, 1,200. Okay, and we're going to get 600. So this 1 unit has brought an extra cost of 600 kwacha. When we move from 1 unit to 2 units, our total cost rise from 1,800 to 2,000. Okay, from 1,800 to 2,000. So remember, marginal cost, change in total cost. So you say the new total cost, 2,000, minus the old total cost, 1,800, 200. So this second unit has brought an extra cost over 200. When we move from 2 units to 3 units, when we move from 2 units to 3 units, our total cost increases from 2,000 to 2,100. So our marginal cost, 2,100 minus 2,100 kwacha. This third unit has brought an extra cost of 100 kwacha. Okay. Remember, the denominator is always 1 because if you say 3 minus 2, that is 1. So 100 divided by 1 is 100. Okay. The denominator is always 1 in this case. That's why I'm just subtracting the total costs. I'm not even doing any division because the denominator is just 1. When we move from 3 units to 4 units, our total cost increases from 2,100 to 2,250. So the additional cost, 2,250 minus 2,100, 150. Okay. When we move from 4 units to 5 units, our total cost increases from 2,250 to 2,600. So the additional cost, 2,600 minus 2,250, 350. So this fifth unit has brought an extra cost of 350. When we move from 5 units to 6 units, The total cost increases from 2,600 to 3,300. So this sixth unit has brought an additional cost of 2,600, which is 700. When we move from 6 units to 7 units, the total cost increases from 3,300 to 4,500. So the marginal cost, the extra cost the seventh unit has brought, 4,300 minus 3,300, which is 1,200. Any questions, colleagues, on the marginal cost? Any questions on that? All right. So, colleagues, even here, you can tell when the law of diminishing marginal returns is beginning. Moment this marginal cost starts to increase from here, have you seen here? From 100, it increased to 150. This is where the law of diminishing marginal returns begins. All right. This is one trick I need you to remember. Okay. And I'll use this graph here. Okay. There's a relationship between marginal product and marginal cost. Remember, we said initially marginal product increases, then it starts to drop, right? We said law of diminishing marginal returns starts where marginal product starts to drop. So now, with marginal cost, the graph is like this. Marginal cost also starts to drop, but moment it starts to increase again, law of diminishing marginal returns starts. So I need you to remember this. The law of diminishing marginal returns starts either when marginal product is dropping, starts dropping, or when marginal costs start rising. Okay. And if they ever ask you in a multiple choice question, why is the shape of the marginal cost curve like this? Because usually the marginal cost curve is, the shape is usually like this, a Nike sign here. The reason the shape is like that is because of the law of diminishing marginal returns. Any questions, colleagues?